Today on Let 'Em Cook, we'll be talking about commentary and how FGC and esports can maybe meld together.
And Evo was just nominated for the Game Awards. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Do awards like even matter?
And you know we got to touch up on Omni-Man release as well as the whole state of MK1 as a whole.
Enough about all that. It's time to cook.
All right. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. I'm thinking about the good times. All right. Hey, what up, y'all? Welcome to Let 'Em Cook. My name is Zaid Tabani.
I'm Sankola.
And I'm Lumi.
Yo, we got a lot to talk about this week. But first off, how was y'all's weekend? How you guys doing?
Chilled out vibe. Was just hanging out with the fam. But now I'm here on the pod, ready to get down and cook.
Yeah, I'm just hunkering down. You know, it's going to be holiday season soon, so I'm going to be super busy and stuff like that. So kind of just prepping for that.
Holiday season snuck up on a lot of us, but really quickly, Lumi, how about you start us off on our first topic?
I want to take a look at commentary as a whole. I'm looking at you, Sankola, right now. How do you feel about like the production team and commentary or commentator relationship as a whole?
So like from what I have done in the past couple of years, you know, from like small, you know, tiny little things, tournaments and stuff like that to like big giant events and things, I do feel like it's gotten, I don't have a frame of reference like prior to any of this. So y'all have to take it with a grain of salt. But like right now, where it has been in the past couple of years, for me, it's been fantastic. Like in terms of how production feeds us information, stuff like that, they give us a name. Sometimes they give us a little bit of information. Like at Evo, we actually got slipped a card saying this person's age, their characters, what they play, yada, yada, all that stuff like that. And, you know, like when it comes to helping us out, telling us when they're going to transition over to an ad or a break or whatever, usually in our ear perfect. And I feel like we have good synergy. Now, this again is the past couple of years. I don't know what happened previously. I don't know how hard this stuff was because of tech or newness or whatever. I do know it's different though compared to things on the outside of other esports, right?
But okay, so maybe we should clarify the lead. There was a lot of discussion specifically around, between Logan and other people around commentary and how it is compared to other specific esports, right? Logan had made that comment a couple weeks ago about commentators wearing suits, and somebody on Twitter or X, I know we'd hate that platform, had mentioned about, oh well, I enjoy commentary in other esports. So maybe this is another way we can kind of prod you, Cola. When it comes to like commentary specifically within FGC and FGC related events, like this guy was saying like, oh well, we don't have like stats and history we can just rattle off the top of our brains. People like Yipes do it, people like Tasty Steve do it because of their vast experience of being in the scene for so long. And you know, places like the NBA and other sports have like a dedicated stat team and history team to kind of feed commentators facts so they can speak on it. What resources do you think that the FGC, like, do you think that's possible to have it at that high of a level for the FGC of like just stats and background information? Or do you think that we lack the infrastructure to be able to do it like other esports like Riots or other major sports like the NBA or the NFL?
Hold up. They got people feeding them information. They got them feeding statistical things, history and stuff. I'm sitting here on my little notepad just writing stuff down, journaling everything I can see in terms of frame data, in terms of who plays what. I'm going into streams consistently every single day, and every commentator is doing that at high level too as well, just to keep up. And when I see someone switch a character, I'm like, oh damn, really? I was just talking to you. I just saw your CFN and stuff like that.
You know what's crazy? You know what's crazy? Like I was at an event last week, and you know how like when you watch the replays, like it says like +2 or +3 in the CFN thing. That's actually Cola. Cola's actually behind the scenes, like at Capcom HQ. He's just like writing with a little pen, like, oh, that's +2, +3. Fuck you, sweat. Oh god, I gotta just
redo everything. But man, that is that's kind of wild to hear that they get that statistical information. However, I think that the way our infrastructure is, like, if we personally are going to do this, I'm gonna maybe skip ahead a little bit with it. But if we were going to do something like that or have somebody feeding us information like that, it would have to be in a segment after. We've had that at Capcom Cup, the season finals before, when we had like a designated team. It was Rob, Brian, and David sometimes, or sometimes we had like the players come up and talk about the history or the frame data, stuff like that in between the segments, between matches. We haven't done it we didn't do it last year. But I'd like to see more of that return, because as it stands, it's not something we can do on the fly while we're doing all the other stuff, memorizing all the other stuff. The top level commentators can tell you tons about the game and the characters and stuff like that, but the history, but they can't be as perfect as somebody who is dedicated to that job actually alone. Like literally, that's their job right there. I could tell you a lot of history and frame data and stuff like that, but I may forget something or mistake something or say, I wonder if this is going to, if we had somebody helping us out like that, that would be great, but that might be better for an analysis segment or somebody hired for that particular segment in general.
Will you feel, so you were saying that segment just in general, when you have like historical and statistical analysis, was in between sections where you're talking about other stuff, like, so you'll have a match and then you'll have like a 5-minute break where you're talking about the stats and the analysis of the game, right?
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about. I'm saying, what about like, for example, okay, so for example, if you're watching a basketball game or something like that, or a football or any game, and somebody hits a free throw, and then the announcer just very quickly offhand goes like, he is like 15% from the 3-point line or something like that, like a very quick stat, right? As opposed to like, and of course NBA has like the desk, the fucking giant TV desk where a bunch of players from 500 years ago sit on the desk and talk about what happened and why. I'm being an asshole. like I don't know Shaq, but he would hate me right now. but like a bunch of like very, very smart, knowledgeable players will talk about the stats and talk about what exactly is going on and how that relates to everything. But I'm more so talking about, like, I think there's a point where if you have like historical context for like if you're watching a Marvel game and you're seeing Storm do some cool combo, it's like, oh well, you know, she didn't used to have that in the old patch. That I think that's another example. Or like, you know, if somebody is hit if somebody's hit like a crouching knee, like a low forward, somebody's hit a perfect parry, right? Like something simple like that. Like, they're known for it, but what if you back that up with a stat? Like if you had somebody in the back watching the amount of times somebody hits a perfect parry, and it's like, wow, he's like, if like, for example, Kakadu, who's known for perfect parries, right? Yes. Like the percentage of perfect parries he's hit is like he is 80, like he's like 9 out of 12 for perfect parries or something like that, right? Like that's interesting. Or like I think even damage per conversion, like every time a poke turns into a conversion, because it doesn't always happen, right? And on how much damage it is possible to calculate how much damage a character does off of a combo as it's happening, right? Like, and even just by percentages, right?
Or
do you think that would be helpful as a quick stat, or again, it's just something that detracts? Because I get what you're saying. It doesn't like necessarily help viewership.
Yeah, I don't think overall it is hard, because like, I feel like we tell the stories in some of these stats sometimes. Like, I could tell you Kakadu is like one of the best perfect parry people in the game. I could tell you the Angry Bird is like top 3 in terms of aggression. I could tell you the history for a lot of players, but like the deep dive, like the really hard statistics in terms of like dumping out damage and stuff like that, that I feel like it would help the commentators in crafting the story as they go along. Would it be enough during, like, having someone feed that information or whatever, or even afterwards? I personally, I would love it. I don't know how much that would impact viewership or impact people, like pulling people into the game. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that's a really cool thing that it would help me. I would love it, obviously, because it only help my job to be better, do better. But I don't know if that's what the community outside of the FGC would really care about. Like, we have those stats sometimes when it comes to Street Fighter League Japan. They'll pull up like how many drive impacts have happened, throws tech and things like that, reversals. And that helps framework a little bit of what happened previously in the match and gives us more to talk about. So that does help. But I don't see people rushing to Twitter and being like, man, I really love that Street Fighter League Japan does that. You know, it's weird, because I feel like that's a cool thing, but it has to be frameworked in a fun way. You know, just like anything with stats, like, it has to be done in a fun way. And I think the commentators could do that if given the data, but can you do it more outside of it, or if you show it on the screen or whatever? I don't know. That's a difficult one to see if that actually pulls in people. I don't think that pulls in people more. Lumi, what do you think? Do you think it pulls in people more?
I think you'd be very surprised. There are a lot of data and like very analytical people in the FGC. I'm looking at you, Lab Monsters. Yeah. And they would love to have on aggregate, like, mean damage, like average damage of like what Zed said earlier, like conversions, stuff like that, right? All of that stuff can go towards a bigger conversation about like whether how the game feels, the character feels, etc., and stuff like that. So
Right.
I agree. However, I'm gonna help you out a bit, Cola. I do think it's a lot to just put on the commentators themselves. You definitely need to have.
Well, you would have to have production team like tuned in,
Exactly.
or somebody specifically. I mean,
Watching
having
it
at least
all the
one
time,
person
yeah.
dedicated is a pretty good, because I mean, we have dedicated people in the FGC who are like super knowledgeable about that shit, right?
Yeah.
You know, for example, James Chen is very knowledgeable about like exactly what's going on in a game, like the possibilities of stuff. You know, there are other people who are really like smart about like exact frame data. Like I know F-Champ for a while would just count frames as he's playing the game, you know? So
That's actually crazy.
you know what's going on. And also there's tools within Street Fighter, like there's tools within like online viewership and matches and stuff like that. And even if Capcom created an apparatus where it's like, okay, you're being able to see frame data in real time, you're being able to see damage in real time, you're being able to see this in real time, that would be very, very easy, like to just grab stats from and feed to commentators. And that's something they can also possibly charge for, you know? So I think that's there. I think maybe the other question I would have for you, Cola, is do you think even us asking this is like, I don't know. I don't know if us asking this is like, hey, we just want this to be as big as other sports, so let's just ape this, right?
Right.
Something I think that we should bring up that wasn't brought up very much is like, especially because it's not in our scene, is Overwatch League shut down. That was the biggest, like that was one of Blizzard's biggest plays to try to go to a traditional sports model where they had teams in regions, they had people who bought teams, they had this whole thing built so that you have to be a fan of a team, you have a league season. Obviously there are other infrastructural issues with Blizzard that kind of fucked that whole thing. Yeah. But I also feel like there's parts of it where they're trying to ape the sport as opposed to like taking parts of the sport that would work within their existing infrastructure and make it work. Because like I think like when you're talking about like I relate it to the NBA a lot, where it's like, hey, the NBA is very, very hype and it's all about culture, and it has very similar kind of roots with the way they talk about things and the way they commentate things with fighting games specifically, right? And you can see analogous places to where, okay, going to a basketball game and the constant movement and the constant this and that feels like a fighting game, right? I can't say I would rather have that analogously than like trying to make fighting games imitate the NFL, because the NFL is not at all like watching a football game is not like watching a fighting game in any way. It doesn't have the same energy. It doesn't have the same momentum or the same flow. It doesn't have the same kind of decision making. Basketball is like minute to minute decision making. It's constant back and forth. It's constant. Who's gonna get this damage? Who's gonna get this conversion? Like even tennis is kind of similar, right? So do you think we're shoehorning it? Or do you think that there is maybe I'm leading the question, but do you think we're shoehorning it? Or do you think that there is a legitimate, like, analogous thing that we can learn from these other sports?
I mean, there's things we can learn. We just have to FGC-ify it. I think when that person was saying that stuff, like, oh, these other esports do it like this, these other esports don't rock the same way as us. They have longer time during their games. Like, we only have sometimes 10 seconds, depending on you fighting Marisa with level 3. You know, you're dead. You know?
Also, visually, they're completely different.
Visually too, right? That's also a big point right there too as well. Visually, we also run our tournaments differently. A lot of us are offline. At least we like to go more offline. You know, whatever it may be. But how things run just in general are way different. So you can't just say, well, this esports does it, we should do it just like them, because it's not the same. But there are things that we could take if we did have a like dedicated person for stats or someone dedicated for certain things to help out the commentators would take more of that data that they're getting, that they wouldn't have to, they can expend more mental energy on other things. They could take that data and frame it in a fun way. However, this goes back to the original, let's go back all the way to the original point. Is this what's really hurting the FGC viewership? And I don't really think it is.
Like, commentary I think is solid right now, but what do you think needs to improve? Like, you're in on it. And I'm sure that there are things that you feel need to be improved in the craft, right? What do you think needs to happen? Not that it's bad, but just what would you think would be better?
There's one thing that, you know, I've talked with Tong about and a few other people that I feel like that we as FGC are lacking. And that's like the professionalism when it comes to like intros and how the other esports people, they don't stammer, they don't, you know, stutter. They're always on form with it. They're great orators, you know, they're fantastic with that, right? They're always equipped also to, at any point, we saw there's a clip there of a guy who's from Call of Duty doing Smash commentary. He is doing Smash commentary. He's never played the game, and he's making it hella entertaining and fun. He is equipped to talk about anything in an entertaining light. That's one thing I think that we haven't reached there yet because we weren't in that realm. Now, the other stuff, I mean, I think we're hella more fun. I think we're hella more entertaining. I think when we go off the rails, it's a lot more fun, yada, yada. There's a lot of things that I think FGC does a lot better. That's me personally. Maybe I'm a little biased. But I think that there's one thing we could take is more of that professionalism when it comes to speaking, you know, at a better pace, you know, speaking almost like, I won't say professional, but like, I guess more structured. You know, I feel like they think about that a lot more than we do.
Maybe that's what people are hearing when they want stats. Like they're thinking they want stats, but they really just want better orators.
Maybe they want something that sounds so professional. But the thing is, I don't want it to sound too professional because the rawness of the FGC, the entertainment factor, it can't be beat, bro. That's too much. Yeah. That's why I started doing commentaries because that is allowed here. Like when I remember like first Capcom Pro Tour finals, they were like, yo, just be you, do whatever you want. And we ended with a segment where they're going to announce a trailer or whatever. Unfortunately, it was a Dan trailer, so that kind of sucked. But they ended it with, we're going to zoom out and then we're going to zoom back in and you're going to turn on the lights again. You're going to like, hey, we got one more thing. That kind of, you know, messing with the production and stuff like that, or, you know, how Yipes will just yell at Mothership and stuff like that, or go off the rails, or how Steve is just like throwing stuff around, or I'm able just to say whatever I kind of want to say as long as I don't cross certain lines and things like that. That's the FGC commentary that's like, that like is really good, that I feel like we should keep that essence of rawness. We should just add a little bit of that esportiness where we have that ability not to stammer so much or get caught up on our words because we're not practicing that area, and that's fine. Right. That's not what we were built.
You're
up
trying
for.
to say you don't want to be the people in the booth who know more than everybody. You're part of the crowd, but you just are the best orators, so you can describe what's going on. Even
better, and that's something that we've all been working better at. I feel like as commentary has grown, that we've all gotten better. Me and myself, everybody in the scene. There's times where obviously you can't hold on to that, like if you're tired or whatever, you got to wake up for a 1 a.m. commentary session, or maybe you're pulled to the side or whatever, and you hey man, get on the mic right now. But overall, that's something that we have gotten better at, but we need to improve. Because I think that's what people say that we're missing. I've talked to some people and they're like, yeah, FGC commentators, they're not as structured as the other esports commentators and things like that. And that's a fair assessment, and that's something that we can work on to be better. Now, everything else, we cook.
Yeah,
everything else.
I'm just trying to find where we're just trying to imitate things. Cause I think there is a frustration with, we're not there yet, right? Which I don't think is like the best thing to have, right? Like, cause a lot of times when we're constantly comparing ourselves, I'm horrible because I do constantly compare this. But when we're constantly comparing ourselves to like, we're not as professional as this, we need to be professional. I think the professionalism is not necessarily. We say it's professionalism, but I don't think the professionalism is necessarily why people don't immediately watch fighting games.
Yeah.
It just needs to be, there needs to be a pipeline to where people understand the stakes of what the event is. Because every single year EVO has stakes. Like EVO has built-in stakes, right? The Super Bowl has built-in stakes. The NBA finals have built-in stakes, right? When you make people understand the stakes of every other event leading up to this event, I think it creates a much more robust understanding of like why you would want to tune in versus like I understand why I wanted to like NBA has already started, right? And the people who are tuning in understand that whatever is going to happen now is going to influence the playoffs or a lot more down the line. But a lot of people who are casual watchers kind of don't give a shit because like, I'll just wait till later, right?
Right.
But you have to have the establishment of like why every step of the process has stakes. There was a point where EVO had a circuit, right? And it was when we were having like 2 majors a month. But like if you were in EVO major, people were or even CPT major, you're tuning in because this is going to matter for CPT. This is going to matter for down the line. It's going to matter for that $1 million, right? If there's if it's just like a one-off tournament, right? And it's just for standings, it's hard to build that momentum. I'm not saying we have to have a circuit, but we have to have a way to build stakes for why it's important. There's a reason why it's important to win a CEO. There's a reason why it's important to win an Evo, right? We need to have more stakes for things like ECT and Combo Breaker and all of those kind of things. Combo Breaker is a great cultural event, right? And I think, and as somebody who's worked with Combo Breaker on music, I think it's one of the best events you could possibly go to, right? And it has its thing. But there needs to be like, oh my God, he won Combo Breaker? That's fucking huge. And that's already built in. We just don't advertise that enough, I feel like, or advertise that effectively enough.
Yeah, there's something interesting to sort of like touch on when it comes to like the stories in particular, because like if you're not keeping your finger on the pulse in the community, sometimes from an outsider perspective, yeah, it's a little tough to understand. But you brought up Combo Breaker, great example, right? That I believe it was West versus Midwest exhibition in Street Fighter V that they did. Fire, absolutely fire. And the more you lean into stuff like that, those stories, right? The whole rivalry. This was back when, like, you know, obviously like coasts had rivalries and stuff like that, and all that stuff. So maybe there's a way, or we can sort of like tackle that, or sort of like take advantage of the fact of like, hey, this match has stakes because of X, Y, Z, right? Like a good example being like last chance qualifiers. Those are perfect tournaments because those are some of the best tournaments to watch because of that reason.
Well, look at the semi. The thing he said, we were talking about this with online versus offline. Look at like semi and Ending Walker winning World Warrior tournaments, right? Like those were two instances where Ryu's won like kind of back to back when they were considered like. That's been the kind of the consistent thing over the last few months, is people complaining about the game, and then all of a sudden some random fucking character who's not JP or Ken wins a tournament, right? And like that's a big deal, and that takes over the discussion. That's like the kind of shit you want to see in a game. Like, holy shit, okay, so this is stuff we have to look into. What's this interesting angle, right? That's the kind of stuff you want. I think when things get boring is when you don't have, when people think that you're just going to watch a tournament that's just going to be JPs and Kens and everything like that. And like, even if it is, there needs to be stakes to what that means about the players. We've talked about this so much, about how the players and their personalities don't get as much shine as the character they're playing. And I feel like leading up to Evo, there was a brilliant amount of work done to really flesh out more about who Mena RD was, more about who Big Bird and Angry Bird were, more about who Punk was, more about who Kakadu was, honestly, more about all of these top 8 players. Like, I had an understanding and a context to where these people came from and why this was such an important Evo, right? Like, even with Angry, like even the story, like the biggest story I heard from the last week about like playership is, oh, Mena RD didn't qualify for, did he not qualify for CPT or something like that? Or he didn't qualify for...
He's not qualified. Because he didn't win those premieres, that's been like the big thing. But the storyline was centered around him not qualifying and then evolved from there. And you know what's wild about all this too as well is like, on top of this, is like, I feel like it's an ecosystem thing. Like the commentators, we do our job to do that. And then there also has to be, you know, content that's produced that showcases that. People viewing that content, obviously, I feel like we talked about that before, and it's not getting supported enough. We'll go into that way later again, I'm sure, because that's going to come up again. But it has to be an ecosystem, everything rising up these stories, that they're out there, not only for the FGC proper, but people outside the FGC. Because if people outside the FGC don't see this, then what's the point? We can circulate all this stuff within the FGC. I can sit here and say my stats about Kakadu doing perfect parry 9 out of 10 times. But if you outside the FGC, what does that mean to you? Why do you care? You probably care more about the fact that Kakadu is this young cat that was a dude that did the dash up DP last Evo. Let me show you a clip of that. That dude was ridiculous. Now look at him on the JP, winning tournaments, poised to possibly take CPT, the finals. Maybe if he qualifies, we'll have to see what happens there. But again, all this leads into like an ecosystem, everything. And the commentators are doing their jobs, content creators are doing their jobs, the player base of the FGC, doesn't matter if you're a player, a big player or not, or if you're an artist or whatever, you just enjoy the game. Everybody rising these ships up to talk about these stories. It's going to be hard because we have so many tournaments and stuff. I get it. And so many things going on. So it's hard to keep your finger on the pulse. But that's why we as a community have to work in the stead of whatever, you know, I can't just be the companies doing it, bro. I get it. The companies need to be better about producing this stuff. But we, as a community, if we care about these stories, we gotta showcase that.
I absolutely agree. And I think also, like, it's a point that we were talking about like weeks ago for an episode that we didn't release because I'm terrible at my schedule. But we were talking about like documentaries in the FGC, and how a lot of the times when we have documentaries in the FGC, they're just like, by the way, this exists, right? And like the documentary work has gotten way better and everything like that, and the content has gotten way better. But I think at this point, like in society knows that esports exists. It's not like a crazy idea that people play this shit for money now, right? What's crazy is why you would be interested in it and why it is appealing outside of just us, right? Because it still seems like a niche habit, as opposed to like NBA and all this other kind of stuff. You see like sports guys, but most people are like, oh, this is actually a cool competition. Like these are people who are big and who have worked for this, and it's not like there's a stigma to the idea of being an esports player that is not true. And when you add the stakes, it removes that stigma, because now you understand why it's important to them, as opposed to they have no life and they're playing this. That's the worst case stigma. When you add, this guy is from Saudi, this guy's from Puerto Rico or Saudi Arabia or Dominican Republic, or this person is. One of the best things I saw was way back in the day was a Red Bull thing about Snake Eyes, and Snake Eyes was doing a crazy run about Snake Eyes. Like, look, I came from Compton. A lot of people back in the day were getting into really, really bad shit, and I just chose arcades, and this is now my career, right? And now I'm on the verge of playing this character and being like one of the best to ever do it. Like, and he is at this point like one of the best to ever do it, right? But like, that was a great documentary that explained who this person was and why this was important and why we were here. You know, Evo had that built in because of the success of Street Fighter 6. It's also encouraging that that's what we're lacking, if that's true, because all this other shit that we're trying to do about like stats, and we have to have more money and more infrastructure, prize pools need to be bigger, that feels like a larger thing to tackle, as opposed to explaining what the storyline and the stakes are. Because if that's going to attract more people and it's just a informing thing of the general public, it's way easier to grow this scene organically and have a big, explosive, even bigger Evo next year because of that, versus, okay, now I have to find another $1 million for another CPT. Now I have to find fucking another you know, like crazy thing. There's ways to build this game that are not just the traditional. I don't have to lose $100,000 on a documentary that everybody already knows what's going on, even if it's well made.
Yeah, and you know that's a fantastic point on it. Genuinely, you know, if that's something that if that's a problem, and if that's something that a lot of people resonate with, that's totally in our hands. And I'm happy that, you know, Reversal's been doing the things that they've been doing, as well as other channels and people that have been trying to document this stuff. Cole, any last thoughts on this topic in particular?
All I'm going to say is, like, if you're a commentator, like, especially if you're from like a local scene, doesn't matter like what area that you're from, talk to the players, learn what they're doing, learn their history. You know, statistics are definitely a harder thing to learn, but if you can pull more out of that storyline that's happening, whether it be the match or something that's coming up or whatever, it's going to make everything a lot more insightful, a lot more watchable. Like, you can make a local seem like it's super hype if the storyline is great. Oh, these two have a beef, or these two, it's a run back from last week or whatever. The more you add that in, the more people will pay attention. And I think the next thing that we have coming up on the deck is actually about the Evo showcase. Lumi, talk to me about that.
Yes. So Evolution was, in fact, I believe, nominated for Best Esport Event of the Year. Is that correct?
Yes, it was nominated for Best Esport Event of the Year for the Game Awards, which you can vote on right now. I'm sure we'll put the link in the description so people can vote.
How do you feel about these game awards when it comes to like FGC events? When you see a fighting game or a fighting game event get nominated for something like that, how do you feel?
The issue is that it gets a lot of exposure and it's great. We don't have like a groundswell for people to understand why that's important to win. I remember the one year that Sonic Fox won like Esports Player of the Year was fucking huge for the FGC, and we seem to have just forgotten that that's a That's a thing. Also, like, I think people just are not happy with awards shows in general. But like, I think there's a look. I didn't get nominated for a Grammy, okay? And like, we were pushing for it, but like, I'm happy that we're still in that conversation, just because a lot of times the biggest thing is we just don't want to be perceived as this weird thing that people can't approach. Right. The second that's the case, like, that's the stigma we're trying to break. So the fact that, oh, Run Back City is just on a ballot, like, it can just be chosen. Like, so it's in the conversation, like, oh, these people did this really cool thing. Right. Even if like nobody votes for it, the fact that we're allowed to be in the room and like have that avenue is great. And the fact that this reached the nomination phase, because you know that there's an initial phase 2 where they weed out people who are like events that are not as important from a board of voters and everything like that. So the fact that it's reached this stage is really big for Evo, right? I think we need to have, like, if we're gonna, I don't know, man, like, because I know that like for award shows, like it's all political, and like you have to run a campaign in order to win that. Like for the other games, like they're all cultural reasons for why. Like last year was God of War versus Elden Ring, right? And that was a huge cultural, like, what did you play more? Like these events, like if Evo runs a for your consideration campaign, they'll win, because the other events are not necessarily running one, and they may be running a small one, right? But like, I hate that you have to run a for your consideration campaign in order to win an event like this, just because that's just the nature of award shows. It's not trying to ding them. It's just like people who want awards want to be recognized for this achievement, and a lot of people don't have a lot of events don't have money to fucking get there. Like if there was a local that was the best local ever, right? Like Combo Breaker is also like, there are events that are on there for those games that are like crazy awesome events that people won't see or hear about because they don't have the money to run a for your consideration campaign or to get people on the ballot, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's great that more people hear about it and it's visibility, but there's no. Somebody once told me, I have friends, not to name drop, I have friends who win Grammys, right? Like I walked into one of my friends' houses. You know, This Is America, the fucking the Donald Glover song. So there was like 100 engineers on that because they were just like, so one of the people who I knew is Young Thug's engineer, and I walked in to do a session with my friend Devesh, and he had the Grammy was just on the fucking table. And I was like, what the fuck? Put that up. Put that in a glass case on the table.
I was like, and I asked him, like, dude, like you have a Grammy? He's like, honestly, man, it's just like a resume pattern. Like it just lets you know that you'll get opportunities. So if you just say, I'm a Grammy award winning this, well, great, cool. You won a Grammy this year. Everybody talks to you, and then you have to get work again. And so people are like, oh yeah, he won a Grammy. Yeah, get him in here to engineer this. He's great. I'll pay him a little bit more. It's like getting a master's degree. Oh, great. You have a master's? Here's like $100,000 more. You went, you dealt with a shitty school and more loans. Great. Come here. That's it. You know, that's to diminish people who work their ass off to win like album of the year. But like a lot of times, like that's how it comes across because of the way award shows are run.
But that's like also like the issue with not only that, but also for like fighting games and stuff like that got picked for the Game Awards too. It's like, it makes people fight. It makes people get angry and upset. Like, oh, well, I gotta for my side, I gotta win for my side or whatever. And unfortunately,
right,
we gotta put it. We gotta say what it is. It is important. If Evo wins, imagine the amount of notoriety besides just the resume padding, as you mentioned, the notoriety that comes from that initial first like couple of weeks. People that don't know fighting games are going to be like, what is this Evo thing? People that have never seen fighting games, and even though Evo is the biggest thing, there are millions of people out there that don't know or don't care, and they will care because it's part of an award ceremony that is revered by everybody in the gaming industry. That's just how it is. If we win that, it'll only be good for us or beneficial for us. Can we ride it to a certain level? We probably could do more, and obviously we have to spend more money to get there. But like, I understand why people will say it's not important, it's not imperative. They hate it, and I hate it too. but it is. If
I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying,
yeah.
I'm not saying it's not important. I'm saying like it just is. It's a naturally just flawed process.
Oh
right?
yeah, no,
It's a process where you're going. It's a process where you're going. What's the best? But it's not what's the best. It's what's the most voted on, right? Like it's what's the opinion of the like. It's in general like when you talk about like if it's this organization and what this organization likes is honoring these things, right? It's a different calculus. And obviously, yes, you're absolutely right. If Evo wins that, that's a huge thing. I just think that the entire structure of award shows is kind of fucking unfair because
it sucks.
You have to spend so much money to do this, right? And like, I love Evo. I thought this year's Evo was one of the best Evos we've ever had, right?
That'd be the best,
period,
actually.
Point blank. But I didn't go to the other events, right? I didn't have a stage at the other events. I don't know necessarily, like if I'm trying to vote for it, then it's just everybody gangbanging their already built audiences as to why to watch this, right? You know? And like, it doesn't really shape out to the way you want it to shape out and to what it signals. And I think there's some implicit knowledge of that. I don't know, man. I think the structure is not, it's a great prize for an unfair structure, for an unfair race. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that like when I asked for both of y'all thoughts, I think we're all on the same page when I say like general public overall. Some people might go, "What's that?" and that'll be the end of it. Some people might actually genuinely look into it. But you know, like you said, Zed, it like on a resume, it just looks better, you know?
Yeah.
If that brings Evo more opportunities, hey, you know, why not? And that's kind of like the attitude I have.
I think the thing is also like we don't recognize Evo is like well known to a lot of people who are like not to like the mainstream public. Like if you tell Evo to somebody on the street, they're not going to know it. But if you tell Evo to anybody who knows even just like a patina about fighting games or like game journalism or anything, it's a well-known event because it's like, oh yeah, that's that fighting game tournament in Vegas. Oh, I get that. I've heard.
Oh, the Daigo parry.
Right?
Yeah. Sorry, yes. Justin.
So people understand that that's a thing that exists, right? What they don't understand though, right, is like, but the thing is not what they don't understand, but what the mainstream public doesn't get is what it like. That's the people you have to convince. You have to like the effort should be convincing people who have never heard what the fuck this is, what it is, right? In a way that is like, oh, like we were talking about stakes, like it's yo, this is super cool, right? So that when it gets to a Game Awards thing, you're like, oh shit, that should be everybody's reaction. Right, like that's the reaction of the thing. Like even for Run Back City on the Grammy ballot, right? Run Back City did so well on socials. It got a bunch of earned media. It's a huge success story for music in this scene. Music, honestly, around esports and video games in general. It is a success story, but in the broader context, of music in general, right, and the music industry, when people see that on a ballot, like, oh, Run Back City, what's that? It should be Run Back City. Oh shit, that thing that made it? Oh fuck, of course I'm gonna vote for it, right? It should be so saturated that you know exactly what it is. Because that's honestly how all of these industries work. They work by, oh, I heard about that, and then it builds from there, right? You have to build more awareness around it. Which I think is why we're talking about commentators, or we're talking about all this kind of stuff. We want to build awareness, but I don't know if it's great that we hit the award circuit. I would love for us to hit there every single year, and I'd love for us to be there on a year where we win it, and people are like, and we win it easily. It's not like we won it because it was like, yeah, it's like, oh, dude. Because if you're gonna do like, because the other version of this is like, what's the best sports event of the year? Is it the Super Bowl? Is it the Rose Bowl? Is it the NBA Finals? Right? Is it the PGA Tour? Is it the US Open? Right? Those are all of those things. And the thing is, when I say every one of those names, you know about that. It's like, oh yeah, I've heard about that, right? But if I say League Worlds, if I say like the Hearth, what are the other like
TFT or something like that? I don't know. Yeah, whatever they got.
I mean, but that tells you everything, right? if I just give you a hypothetical matchup for fucking sports events. I can't even give you a hypothetical matchup except for like a couple different. Okay, so for best esports event, League of Legends World Championships, Blast TV Paris. I didn't even know that was a thing. Blast TV Paris Major 2023, International Dota 2 Championships 2023, EVO 2023, Valorant Championships 2023. There are so many other events that occurred this year, but none of those, if you told people on the street that any of those occurred, they would not even know that that was a thing, right? As opposed to if you said like, hey, did you know that the Super Bowl happened this year? Fucking, of course I know that the Super Bowl happened this year. Did you know that fucking, Kanye did some weird shit this year? Yeah, of course I know Kanye did some weird shit this year.
Right.
It just needs to be publicized well enough so people know what something is.
To say, like, if we were going to get there, we would have that reference in the first place, right? If we're going to get to a point where, like, it's like, of course Evo going to get there. Of course Evo deserves to be on the ballot. That's something that is going to happen when we have that reference in the first place. When we have that love around Evo, or that notoriety around Evo in the first place. Because, like, if we could get on the ballot and be selected for something, and we get up there and it's like, we win it, and people are like, what the fuck is Evo? Then I don't know how we even got there in the first place compared to things like League and stuff like that. But we definitely need to, as we said before, have everything push up to have these stories and have everyone talking about Evo and all the other things, the things that we have at Evo, all of the music, of course, that we have at Evo, to be up there and boosted so that people know, and that when they push to have this happen naturally. And also that may help the FGC not hate this so much, because I get it. I don't like it either. I don't like having to watch Evo not win something but be nominated for something. I just think it deserves the best, obviously, considering it's one of the most fantastic tournaments I've had. But, like, I want this to be something where, you know, everybody is like, I agree with you, Zed. Everyone's like, hey man, this tournament right here deserves it. Right there.
You guys saw RRR, right? That movie? That Indian movie? Well, maybe it's not a great example for you. But at the Oscars like a year or two ago, there was a movie called RRR. It was like on Netflix. It was a movie in Tamil, right? From Tollywood. It's like, so there's Bollywood and there's Tollywood, right? So people who are like, it's a subsection of India. So it was this big Indian or Tamil film, right? That got huge press on Netflix and everything. Now here's the thing. Years ago, there was a Lagan, which is a really well-known Indian film, had gotten nominated at the Oscars. The Indian and Bollywood was like, yo, we really want to make an imprint and win these awards. And it was just kind of like, okay, yeah, Lagan happened. Okay, bye. Right? And a lot of Indian people are like, how the fuck? This is bullshit. Like, how are we going to crack it? Yeah. When this film had its moment, there was a concerted effort to push, because it got nominated for Best Song, a concerted effort to push Natu Natu, which is this big song and big dance number, everywhere. It was all over social media. It was every single place it could possibly be. Hey, this is a cultural moment that you guys have to look into. This was really cool. And people loved doing it. But like, oh my God, this is a cool thing that happened. I want to know about this cool thing that happened. And it was performed at the, oh my God, my cat is screaming. It was performed at the Oscars, right? And it did really fucking well, right? And then right afterwards, like it fucking sweeped it. It was very easy. It easily won. And it was, not only was it a big deal that it won, right? It was a big deal because people were happy that it won. And everyone lifted it up like, oh my God, we're so happy for you. Right?
Success story. Yeah.
And that will drive Dollywood and the rest of the cinema and RRR and the director and everyone else from there so much more forward than anything else, because it's not a surprise win. It's a win that absolutely deserves it, right? When Nelly Furtado won a Grammy, people were like, I'm not going to go into a rant, but like, I'm just saying, if people know what the fuck you are, you do better than people if you're the dark horse and people are like, oh shit, what the fuck? Yeah.
All right. So, next topic. Omni-Man may deal different amounts of damage depending on whether he's on PC or consoles in Mortal Kombat 1. Obviously, this is a pretty rough mistake. This is a really bad thing that's happened. I want to sort of like broaden the conversation a little bit to MK1 as a whole in general, because there's been sort of like a lot of reactionary patches and different things that's happened. I want both of y'all's takes on kind of like the state of MK1 at the moment.
I think there's a couple issues. Number one, like NRS isn't NRS kind of used to these kind of bugs in general, of these kind of things that happen?
There's a larger problem to this. There's a larger problem. So some of the NRS games in the past have been buggy. Y'all are right. I don't know to what extent, I'm not sure, but I think that the people that work on the PC port are different than the console port. And
correct.
So there's always been that difference, right? Like of who's mainlining like the PC port. And I remember back in the day for like, you know, for NRS games, PC would come a little bit later, right? Like for patches and stuff like that, it wouldn't be on the same time. Some of that's just Steam being Steam, right? You get certs for console maybe faster than PC
right.
or otherwise. So like there might be that variation right there. And they haven't found a way to, I don't know how you do that. I don't know what developers do for that, but that's
it's also a game with
too.
It's also a game with a large budget that has a lot of other things going on, and I think like, look, like, I think there's this habit, and also in I'm not going to defend like the fact that like there's problems here, right? Like,
right.
I think even Ed Boon understands that like, okay, we got to figure this out, right? It's not intentional, and it's not because that team doesn't work hard, right? Because their priority is story, presentation, game feel. When the game came out, it felt really nice, right? And it still feels pretty nice, and they're trying to listen to the community as much as possible, right? But they don't have the same, they have a different barometer they're trying to meet because of their fan base than Guilty Gear and other things would possibly meet, right? And when you have those issues, right, it's very easy for developers to be like, yeah, fuck you. But like they're immediately trying to patch out those issues, right? Which means they care about the competition side of things. They're trying to figure those things out. Now, those are standards in other games and everything like that. You know, there's also been a large amount of a large like difficulty with Warner Brothers over the last like few years, right? It's not dissing them, but like it's just been a difficulty. Like when you're working for a big publisher, you have a lot of other steps you have to jump through. That's and a lot of other deadlines you have to meet, and a lot of things you have to focus on, and balance may take itself by the wayside, or people may overlook things because you don't have enough time, you know? So I think I think it's not a good look, but I don't think it's a malicious look or a look of because of laziness. Does that make sense?
We don't want a backseat game develop here. Like we're not.
That's the biggest
this team
issue,
works really hard. Like you can't deny that, right?
Because you get that from you get that from literally every fighting game. Is people going like, "Oh my god, what were they thinking?" Giving
so
JP.
lazy. Like why would they do that?
There's you like. We also live in a bubble. Like FGC is also somewhat of a bubble where people are like, "Oh, this is the correct decision," when it's not always, you know. And like again, what people are thinking. You were talking about it last week, Cola, which was like, "Yo, everybody's talking about JP and Luke and Ken," and then like, well, wasn't there like a thing where like there wasn't a top tier character in the top 8 or something like that recently, or some shit like that?
For Puerto Rico, at least, there was. Yeah. I mean, she's top tier, but she's not like top tier. Like jury, it's like jury on jury, like mirror match to end the night. And like, there's been Hibiki the Beast, he won with Lily. So like, there's been a lot of variance more than what people think besides their bubble. So,
but honestly, that's more variance than there was in Super Street Fighter 4, which was considered to be this beacon of balance, you know, when it came out, right? So like, I think when it comes to those kind of things, like, you know, we are in our own bubble. I don't think we should. It's like watching film when you ever like go on film Twitter or film like or Letterboxd or something like shit like that, and you watch people review movies, and you're like, all of these people are reviewing movies like they write movies, but like they have they're nowhere near. They're like, I work in the industry. Like, what do you do? Like, I look at a movie and I would do this and it works. And like, that's about as far as it goes. And a lot of people who are not privy to game development, but just like kind of read stories about game development, think they have more of a knowledge of than the actual game developers themselves, right?
I mean, like, look at what happened with Street Fighter. Street Fighter has an error with the OD glitch. They had that. That was ridiculous, where like you would spend OD gauge, but it wouldn't spend, so you still have a sliver, so you can do extended combos. Even for a game that's tightly as made as Street Fighter 6, it still had that issue. So the Jamie drink issue too as well. Like, I know that Mortal Kombat has had quite a few more issues, and that a character doing more damage on one console to another means a lot for
the simultaneous button input. The fact that you could tech all that was a game-breaking glitch, right? Like there's a difference between like you do a little bit more damage on one thing, then you don't ever have to tech a throw. And if it could have been very easy, like for somebody to like figure that shit out and not tell anybody for a long fucking time.
Save it for nationals. Like that was totally something. The right person found that. Woo, like, just straight up, the right person found that tech, and thank God that person found it. Because I know 30 people. I've asked 30 of my friends, if you found that, would have you said anything? And they go, I would have won Evo. Like, what are you talking about?
Then I would say afterwards, like, oh yeah, but by the way, I got this little something. But like, you know what? The wild thing for Mortal Kombat is, you look at the game, how it's structured. It's got the cameo system, which adds a lot of variance. You've got a cameo, and now you got to think about how that cameo interacts with all the other characters. It's like 16 cameos, I think, or maybe more than that. I might be wrong. I don't remember how many. And there's like, what, 20 characters or 25 characters. And there's things that they could add to the game, make it better. Like crossplay needs to be there and some other stuff. And this glitch is kind of wild. And the glitch that they had previously with the player 2 having different combos in player 1, that needs to be fixed, and they did it. But I do feel like a lot of this stuff, like, it needs to be addressed and talked about, but I think people get a little bit too wild. They're like, oh well, that's why I didn't win this tournament. Omni-Man didn't have the right damage, I was missing 5 pixels.
I think people in general think that competitive games need to be this like even keeled debate and structure of skill and titans. Like that's why you see people who like get really mad when motherfuckers are random. If you go to Reddit, people are like, oh, how a typical Ken will just Jinrai kick, and then he'll just do an uppercut, and then the America loses. Like what? Like it's America the same loses. Shit. Yeah, like all the time. But like the thing is, like, again, you look at Zaid and he talks about like people do this shit all the fucking time. Who's like, wasn't there like a Saul player in Guilty Gear XX who's just fucking random?
Oh yeah,
just does shit.
Oh yeah,
like how many people are like watching everybody? My favorite thing was also when Daigo in Street Fighter 4, when Daigo was like just crushing it with his career, and he's always crushing it, but like crushing it with his career, and like he was like, I'm like everybody was talking about like the Umeshoryu is this brilliant psychic technique, and then listening to players being like, oh, motherfucker, it's this fucking guy is mashing. This guy's fucking mashing.
This guy's random.
Like he doesn't. It's a calculated mash, but it's just like, oh, okay. So when he does it, it's psychic, but when I do it, it's random. Fuck you. Like it was a big like annoyance from certain people who would talk about that shit.
Imagine saying out loud, Daigo is random. I'm sure there'd be like a group of people who's like, you're coping. Like just. That was the 500 level IQ play that you just didn't think of.
Yeah.
My Daigo would never.
And then Justin was like, "Oh, like I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna fucking sit here with my stream and my child and build a life for her. But if I hear one more 'Let's go Justin' on a fucking gingerbread box, I'm gonna lose my shit."
Oh my god.
Anyway, that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, we're going to start transferring these episodes over to the main Zaid Tabani channel. So you're going to get to see that in all of its full glory. Transfer this to Eclipse channel. But anyway, any last thoughts? Lumi, St. Cola?
My final thoughts are, if someone wants to be my statistician for commentary, please hit me up on my email. I can't really pay you anything, but if you want to do that work, see me real soon. Okay?
Yeah, overall, I just wanted to say that, like, I think we had a good discussion. I definitely want to hear the people's thoughts on this. Overall visibility and what exactly can we do to kind of like highlight stories specifically.
Yeah, I think that's an important discussion that needs to be had in a way that is not X related, if that makes any sense. But anyway, that's gonna do it for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Tabani.
I'm St. Cola.
And I'm Lumi.
And we'll see y'all next week.